Hi, my name is Joseph Gresowitz, and this is my final project on COMM 101C. The metaphor I chose to describe communication and my own definition of it is going to be navigation. I chose this because communication isn't just about exchanging information or just how we talk to people in a day-to-day. It's about steering through uncertainty, cultural differences, emotions, digital noise, and just overall misunderstandings. Just like when you're driving or using a GPS or a map, communication requires constant checking, adjusting, or reorientating so we don't get lost in translation. The problem my definition addresses is the way miscommunication is increasing, even though we're more connected than ever through the internet and technology. Online messages lose tone, families can misinterpret how we talk to each other, cultures collide, algorithms distort meaning, and people operate with completely different assumptions. And we think sometimes we're being clear, but every person is navigating through their own set of thoughts and through their own, or navigating through their different maps. When I think about communication as navigation, I think about my own daily experiences, whether I'm talking to coworkers at work, talking to my classmates or professors at school, or being at home with my family. I always have to adjust how I say things based on who I'm talking to or what crowd I'm talking with. So no conversation is ever just a straight line. Communication scholars also actually agree and support this idea. Kenneth Burke, I'd like to mention in the essay Definition of Man, argues that humans are symbol-using animals whose understanding of reality is filtered through language, and that means every person sees the world through a different symbolic map. And navigation to me makes sense here as my metaphor because we're all using different thoughts and ideas. And of course, at some point, we're going to run into misinterpretation and misunderstanding. A second scholarly source I like to mention, and the source that kind of influenced me, is Irving Goffman's concept of face work. And on face work, he describes communication as a constant process of managing impressions, adjusting our behavior, and responding to others to maintain social order, which is basically just navigation, and which we're just steering ourselves socially so we don't run into constant and consistent conflict or embarrassment. For my course source, I looked at Solomon and Thesis of Family Communication chapter, which explains that families operate as systems, where one message can really reshape the emotional climate of the group, or can reshape just the tone of the setting. And I experienced this firsthand myself, actually, most recently, where I'm having a conversation with my parents or just with my family, and sometimes one misunderstood comment at home can really shift the whole mood for the night. And so you're navigating through tension rather than the connection that we want to withhold through communication. And all three of these ideas point to the same thing, which is communication is never just a message. It's an ongoing process of steering, sensing, adjusting based on who we're talking to or what's going on around us. And I argue that communication is navigation, is that it's the most important definition because it acknowledges something other definitions often ignore, which is communication is always in motion. It's not just a one and done exchange. But once communication is more like a journey, where the route constantly always changes because identities change, contexts that we could say can change, relationships or friendship change, and overall everyone's meaning of certain things can often change through time. This metaphor also acknowledges power. Not everyone has the same ability to steer. Some people navigate with privilege, while others navigate through stereotypes, stigmas, or structural barriers. Navigation makes communication feel more human and real, and it doesn't pretend that perfect understanding is easy. It acknowledges that we get lost sometimes, and that's perfectly normal as humans as we navigate through life and communicate. As we navigate through communication. And this definition, I feel like, fits the major's theme across our semester. And some of those I'll be listing some of those examples here. NCA's definition says that communication is how we create shared meaning and navigation, and how navigation is the process of working towards that meaning. Eddie describes communication as a field built on patterns of meaning making, and navigation uses those patterns to guide us. Key speech tradition frames rhetorical as an influence, which is basically steering others ethically. Solomon and Thesis describe family messages as part of the system, which is also a navigation process. And the last one being Jack's article on the limits of human communication, which it reminds us that no symbolic system is perfect. We're all just doing our best to navigate through the different gaps in understanding. And one more thing is that in week 11's lesson, it organizes theories that communication creates social structures, which means we are just building our own map and direction as we navigate through everything. So instead of replacing the definition from the course, communication is navigation, this ties together into a metaphor that captures how communication actually feels in real life. So communication isn't always just a straight line. Like I said, as my metaphor, it's navigation. Reading signals, adjusting those signals, adjusting through different courses of life, repairing misunderstandings, and trying to move with people instead of against them, and navigating everything in our own sense of communication. That's all for here today, and thank you for listening.